Hi, I'm Dr. Ben Newman, and I'm a coronavirologist with 25 years' experience studying these rotten little viruses. Let's answer your questions. Next question is from Tufty. Yeah, hello. Hi, Nicola and Dr. Ben, and greetings from the Isle of Man and Sarah. Yeah, okay, I think I remember talking to you much earlier in the pandemic. I think we were hoping at that time that the Isle of Man might escape because of its islandness, some of it. And I think I remember reading that it was pretty bad there, like it was pretty bad everywhere else. And yeah, that's lousy, but yeah, I guess that's everywhere. Stupid virus, yeah. Ugh. Anyway, we are on heightened alert because of a small number of the P1 Brazil variant cases. Okay, in the UK. And let's see, I've read that this variant is more resistant to existing natural immunity. Yes. And presumably vaccine derived immunity. Definitely. Um, and I think we are more certain on the vaccine derived immunity, but it would probably be more resistant to most natural immunity unless you had somebody who had already had P1 somewhere else. Yeah, is the idea. So the P1 variant, if I remember correctly, has a bunch of changes, but the key ones that are ringing a bell are N501Y. So that is one that is spreading around the world in several lineages. This is one that just keeps popping up all over the place, and it's in the B117, the B1351, which are the UK and South Africa variants. It's also in some other variants, which are derived from a European strain, and you can find those across America, in the Midwest, right where I am. Yeah. In addition to that, I believe this one also has a change at position 484, which is E glutamic acid going to a K, which is lysine, if I remember right. And so the one mutation, the 501, makes it changes the shape of the top in a way that it can grab the human receptor a little bit tighter, we think. The 484 is kind of underneath that, and it changes the way that this looks. So it can still grip just fine, but normally we block the spike by sticking antibodies to it, and it changes the shape of that so that they can still get a good grip, but the antibodies will kind of bounce off some of those. So yeah, that is a rotten one. So the question is, what are your predictions epidemiologically and politically? Yeah, with the current data. And what would the impact be if the cases were found in Texas after the statewide lockdown release? Oh boy, man, kicking us when we're down. Huh? Yeah, I guess we did this to ourselves, or somebody did anyway. Yeah, cheers. All right. Epidemiologically, that's an interesting one. So, what we know so far is that mutants with the 501 and 484 change together seem to be the most resistant to current vaccines and to older strain, like immunity that's based on older strains. So these would be the candidates that would be most likely to either break through a vaccine on somebody who's had a vaccine, or to reinfect somebody who's already had COVID and got over it, and yeah, then ran into the wrong strain again. But I think the more interesting thing here is that worldwide, the amount of these over the last month or so seems to be static or shrinking a little bit. Now, you've got to be careful with these because there are places like Brazil is completely on fire and out of control right now. And at least a sizable proportion of that is going to be the P1 and P2 variants. And I think the number of cases there and the sequencing results are still, there's not a great deal of data coming out yet. So we will eventually know, but we don't know perfectly right at the moment. So, yeah, so, but based on the estimate, it looks as though these strains are not out competing some of the other things that are out there. The ones that are out competing other strains at the moment are derivatives of the 20C lineage, which is kind of all over the world. B117 derivatives, those seem to be really rapidly increasing their market share. So that's the one that's really coming. But fortunately, that is one that the vaccines seem very able to hit. And that's one where you would get a lot of immunity still from an earlier COVID case. So, yeah, those are problems we can solve. And the fact that some of these other mutants that are potentially scarier are not really spreading fast, they're not out competing the other ones that are out there, I think tells us that in changing enough to get away from this immune response, they have also perhaps changed in a way that they have to pay a fitness cost. It's like a penalty. Like, yeah, if you, I don't know, if you wanted to be really good at hammering nails, if you were somehow to change and get just a giant, meaty ham fist, you might be great at that, but it may be a detriment. You may walk, leaning to one side all day, may cause back problems, and overall, it may not be an advantage. Just being better at one thing doesn't make you better at all the things that go into being alive. And so I think that's what we're seeing right now, is that the viruses that are of most concern are also paying a pretty high fitness penalty in order to avoid these parts of the immune system. So that actually is decent news, and that means that with vaccination we ought to be able to knock these down, and with a booster for the new variants, one of these 484 variants, I think we can probably knock COVID out. Now the question is, the clock is ticking, can we get blanket vaccination of pretty much everybody before we start to run to the end of the immunity in the people that have already been vaccinated or have had the virus? And that's a good question, and we don't know the answer, but that is the challenge, and that is where I would really like to see states and countries and everybody, international organizations, focusing their effort. And I think the people that are doing this work and where it's their job, they know this. They don't need to listen to me telling them this. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, if it were up to me, I probably would not be lifting mask mandates just this minute. That's just not the right time. As we're starting to get a hold on this, but as potentially dangerous viruses are creeping in and variants, it's a good time to drive it to extinction, put the nails in the coffin, and not mess around, basically. Yeah, so good question. And yeah, it's very much watch this space, and we'll keep you updated on what these new variants are doing. It's not going to be anything good, but yeah, best thing we can say is that these things have died out. And so I'm looking forward to that. And I bet you are too. Yeah, so you take care there on the Isle of Man. Yeah, just, just tell other people that want to come to the island, no thank you. Yeah, we're dealing with our own thing right now. And yeah, I think it's going to be all right. Best of luck to you and to everybody out there. Thanks very much. This was Ask Dr. Ben.